Hey guys, I thought it might be helpful if I walked through some of the new material since I don't always get a chance to do that in class with the HL level students. So the new section this week is all about production planning. It's 5.5. Oh, here we go. So the supply chain process. Really, it's not that complicated. Let me move my face out of the way. So we have raw materials going to the supplier, going to manufacturing, distribution, the customer, and then the consumer. Customer being like the retail store, consumer being like the actual person. So the supply chain process is all about managing the flow of raw materials through the whole thing. It could also be the flow of information as well, getting from the company to the customer itself. And my face is in the way again. All right. There's no good place for my face. So between just-in-time and just-in-case, we've kind of talked a little bit about just-in-time and just-in-case back in 5.3. Just-in-case holds reserves of raw materials and finished products just in case of some kind of sudden demand. Obviously, that's why they call it just-in-case. Just-in-time produces as we need it. So it comes into the product store right as we need it. It gets on the shelf, it goes off the shelf really, really fast. So just-in-case, stock is brought in and stored, so we have to have space and we have to pay for that. It reduces pressures on cash flow because we don't immediately need to go out and buy raw materials in order to justify our production process. It reduces costs in some way because you can buy in bulk. I mean, think about going like Sam's Club or Costco or something like that. Can meet sudden changes in demand. So as we have an increase in demand, we're ready to go and we're totally prepared for it. It provides lots of spare parts so that we have other options. If we get a bad batch of something in our supplies, in our raw materials, we have something sitting in the storeroom that we can go ahead and use. We don't have to wait on more product to get to us. All stock is stored and ready to use. There's no waiting on the customers to come in and say, we want this, so please prepare it for us. And suppliers generally don't charge a premium price for this because we have a consistent supply coming in from them. They don't upcharge us. Just in time, though, produces as we need it. So stock is brought in only when needed and only as much as we need. Helps with working capital because business can be using the money for day-to-day stuff. So we're not always just completely dependent on what we have in the storeroom. It reduces costs because we don't have storage and we don't have waste necessarily. It reduces chance of holding stock that can't be sold if we have something that goes obsolete all of a sudden. And there's less chance of ruined or damaged stock. I mean, if we were holding something that could potentially be perishable and we lost power and like the fridge or the freezer or whatever the product might be died or went bad and we couldn't use it. So we reduce the likelihood of that kind of waste. And then there's more space for alternative production plans, something else we could use with that space. If we need the space at all, we don't have to necessarily rent it, things along those lines. It builds a closer relationship with suppliers, which can be a plus and a minus. If the supplier, is running out of something, we can't necessarily find it from them. We have to have a very close relationship with them in order to make sure that we get exactly what we need when we need it. So taking a look at the stock control chart, especially the buffer zone, the reorder level, the reorder quantity, and lead time. So remember, stock is the same thing as inventory. There's two issues here in terms of cost. Cost of not having stock when we need it versus cost of having too much stock in terms of storage and in damage. So the EOQ is the economic order quantity. It's the amount that should be ordered for a given period of time. So if we're looking at the chart, we've got cost and we've got quantity, and these are our ordering costs. And the bigger the quantity is, the lower the cost is. This is the cost of inventory holding, so that's always going to stay constant. And the green one here is the total cost. So right here at the sort of bottom of that total cost line, and then where inventory holding costs and ordering costs meet is our EOQ, and that's our economic order quantity. So that's the point, the amount that should be ordered for a given period of time, because at this point, costs go back up. Before that, costs are coming down. So that's where we want to order. And move my face again. Just moving my face all over the place. So interpreting stock control charts, the buffer zone reorder time. So in this example of a stock control chart, the initial order is the first amount of stock delivered. It says beg or year should be beginning of year. Sorry about that. So right at the beginning of the year. The usage pattern is how much stock is used over a period of time. the highs and lows around holidays or busy times or whenever our product is really important and needs to be sold a lot of. There's a max stock level that we'll have, and that's the most we want to hold. And there's a minimum stock level that we'll have where we're still holding something, and that's our buffer. And then there's the reorder point, which is the point where we want to order more stock. So it's not quite at that minimum level where we hit that buffer, but it's getting close. The reorder quantity is generally how much we order at a certain time, and lead time is the time between ordering and receiving. So we place the order on Monday, we receive it by Friday. That's 5 days of lead time. So if you're looking at this chart, this line across the top is the maximum level. The green line in the middle is the reorder levels, and the minimum down here, the red one, that's the minimum level. And then so the buffer is between the minimum and the zero. The reorder level, this is the point where we trigger within our accounting systems that we need to order more of whatever the stock is, whatever the inventory product is, so we can get back up to our max level. We never want to go above our max level because we either don't have space or storage, or there's some other issue and some reason why we don't go above that. Factors regarding stock. So it can be really important to understand why we'd hold inventory and why we wouldn't hold inventory. The market, if we are selling something that the market doesn't support, we don't want to hold on to it. If we're selling something that's really important that people buy a lot of, we want to hold on to it. The final product, the stock itself, how much does that cost? The infrastructure, do we have the space? Do we have whatever we need? If we need heating or air conditioning or a fridge or a freezer or any of these other things, do we have what we need in order to maintain our stock? Finances, do we have the money? We don't want to dump all of our money into holding a bunch of inventory we can't sell right away because our money is basically just sitting there doing nothing. And human resources, how many people do we need to maintain, to watch things, to move stuff around, whatever the issue is, do we have the human resources for it? So here we get into one of the calculations. This is a capacity utilization rate. Remember, they give you all of the equations that you need on the test, but you need to know this one as well, or know how to use this one. So the capacity utilization rate is the actual output divided by the productivity capacity times 100, because it comes out as a percentage. So if we say the actual output is 80, the product capacity that we could have is 100, so times 100, that gives us 80%. So a hotel, for example, that has 100 beds and on average fills 80 has an 80% capacity. And that's what we're talking about here. You want to aim for a high capacity. Hotels right now are not having a very high capacity because of what things are going on, and they have to be more creative with what they're doing in order to fill those rooms. Interpreting productivity rates. Let's see if I can, yeah, there we go. So productivity rate is the total output divided by the total input. This needs to be analyzed in context. So make sure that you're thinking about this in terms of what you're talking about. If you know that a productivity rate is 67%, that doesn't actually tell you a whole lot. You need to know the industry average for comparison to really give you an idea of how you're doing. So for example, if the rate is lower than the industry, management needs to take some kind of action. If the rate is higher than the industry, then your company is considered more efficient and you should be happy. Distinguishing between cost to buy and cost to make. If a school district needs 20 buses to run, should they buy them or should they outsource them, like rent them? The company will charge $10,000. If we run it ourselves, the buses cost $100,000, and then we have $10,000 in variable costs for wages and gas per bus. So over here on the left-hand side, we've got the cost to buy with price times quantity. So at 20 buses, $10,000 is $200,000. Cost to make, that's where we get a little bit more complicated because we've got the fixed cost and the variable cost times the quantity, and that comes out with $300,000. So when we're looking strictly at the numbers, we can see that the cost to buy is much less than the cost to make, so we'd outsource in this particular example. This also doesn't take into any human factors. It looks solely at the costs. And there's an ethical factor here as well, too, because if we already have employees that we are employing to like drive the buses and shuttle the kids around, to suddenly fire them would be very cruel or very mean. And it would really depend on, could we move those employees maybe into different areas within our business, in the school district, or doing something else with them. And so we'd have to take a look at the human factor as well, really, before we can make any kind of decision. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Have a great day.